So it was rather quick.
So,
The so that's my understanding. And I feel very blessed to have the ritual we have around someone's passing,
mhm.
because it does give us a chance to actively mourn and have a pathway back into society as we move into a new life. As I had
No
to
kidding.
in the past,
No
you
kidding.
know.
And
Um,
not only for the mourner, but for the people around the mourner, like how to relate to them, what to say, what to do. There's kind of a they don't have to kind of guess. There's Shiva, and then there's these different processes, phases that you go through, and you're familiar with them. So you're not so awkward in what do I do, you know?
right. And not only that, we say Kaddish
Hmm.
for almost a year, for 11 months. Some people a little shorter. It depends on their local custom. Um, and I wondered, as I was getting to the end and doing the last Kaddish as a mourner, and I went, why am I stopping now? And then I realized that there needed to be a stop so I could do a final, okay, this is marking the end of my mourning, actively mourning him.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean I won't miss my husband,
yeah,
but it also means I have to be moved into living the life I have now. And when it's time to say Kaddish on the anniversary of a person's death, which is 12, 13 months later, because we're using the Jewish calendar,
yes, right, right.
um, it's not about mourning. When we start saying Kaddish for his yahrzeit, which is the anniversary, it's
Hmm.
about celebration of their life.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
it's just such a beautiful transition.
It is. It's such in all the things that I've studied, from me personally, how it fits me. Um, Judaism has the best, deepest, and most effective uh, ways for dealing with the death of a loved one of any culture I've seen. It's just so good. And and the other interesting thing for those non-Jews or have never heard Kaddish, it's a prayer that's said for the deceased, as Nahum was just describing. But the interesting thing about the prayer is there's nothing about death in it whatsoever.
All
It's
about the
it's
glory of God.
about the glory of God and how wonderful God is. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. It's not
So
even in Hebrew, it's in Aramaic.
yeah, that's right. It's not even in Hebrew, it's Aramaic, which is very unusual for Hebrew prayers. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I will pass to
Thank you so
Sheila's.
much, Nahum. Yeah, surely, go ahead.
Okay. Before I poke you, I need to give Auntie her weather report.
Ah,
And sorry, Tallahassee weather report. Even though I heard you had some snow last night.
we
Uh,
did.
naughty, naughty. I still haven't heard. You know that. Heard from Lance. So Auntie will be whimpering, would have been whimpering this past week we had, because it did get at one time into the 80s. And now we are getting into the 50s during the day, low 50s, mid to low 50s during the day, and at night between 40s and 20s,
Uh,
depends. So we're getting a cold front, major cold front, and that's cold for
Now's your time to
Tallahassee.
come visit us.
yeah, right. There you go. That's very
Uh,
cool for you guys. Yeah, no kidding.
we may even get some wintry stuff next weekend, but it's been jumping around, so we'll see. Um, which is unheard of for Tallahassee.
No
Um,
kidding.
okay.
Feel free to send it up here, Shirley, if you don't want
I know, I'd love to. Not, I don't want to
it.
drive in it, but I love watching it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, now to your poking, you're
Mm,
picking on.
mm.
Um, okay, one, as you know, we both talk the lingo of religion. So there are two you forgot.
Okay.
One, um, is the Satan part.
Yes.
You forgot Buddhism.
Yes, I did.
There's a whole period with the Buddha, and
Yeah.
he's doing his fasting,
Yes,
and
and temptation. Yes.
yes, and he has all these different temptations.
Yeah. And he finally has to confront Mara and overcome. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So
It's
you
it's
missed one.
thank you. I did. It's pretty widespread actually. Um, and it's in one form or another, it's very similar story. Thank you for
The
mentioning.
secondary one, in the beginning, when you were talking about the whole resurrection part, Ezekiel 37, my favorite, dry bones.
Dry bones, that's where it comes from. Yep.
So
Yep.
you forgot to mention that one too. You know better.
The prophet Ezekiel. Yeah, that's where the collection of the bones comes from. Yeah, exactly
Mhm.
right. And then also in there where they raise an army by these animating the skeletons and that's how they make their army huge. So yeah, it's very very biblical. Even whatever we may think of it in modern terms, it was very common back then.
Oh, right. And the blood part is on the lintel of the doorpost for Passover.
Yep. 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 And the that's yeah, there's a whole well, we should do a thing on blood sometime. There's a whole thing about that in ancient cultures. But but yeah,
There's one thing that comes to mind as you say that, and that is, and it was coming across as you were early speaking. If you have to have an organ removed
Oh,
and you're
right.
being
oh
buried
right, right.
by a Jewish
Orthodox.
whatever funeral parlor, they'll save that organ
Oh
because you
yeah,
have to be buried with all your parts.
Arts.
yeah, that's
You
right.
can fully resurrected at the time.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So things like um when adversaries of Israel who know that when they do things like blow up people, it's not just to cause terror and havoc, it's so that they can't do that. And it's which we don't even think about probably Westerners over here. And
Right.
and also the same with if they've had hostages that are killed, not returning them intact, which we
Mhm.
don't hear much about, but that also happens. They just cut off a finger. They'll do something so that they're not, even if they were intact, they're not intact when Israel gets them back. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole weird thing with cremation, which
Mhm.
is the similar idea of not,
Because you destroy the body.
body.
Yeah.
Well, and of course, the worst part of, people going back to the Holocaust.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, I mean, there's interesting things, but yeah, it's,
For sure. Now Hindus on the opposite end of the scale, Hindus insist on cremation so that the soul doesn't remain attached to the body, which they think it could do if this body was still intact somewhere in the ground. So yeah, yeah. But
yeah.
yeah, those are great. Thank you for all those extra references.
You're
Um,
welcome.
Thank you.
by the way, some of you may or may not have noticed the recording just restarted because I have a different camera that I use for these. And that's the camera that's also malfunctioning tonight since the internet went down. So I don't know if I lost all my presets when that happened. I don't know. I haven't had time to look. But that's usually the recording. And so that should have been recording. But when the camera blipped, I didn't think about the fact that I just needed to turn it off because the camera wasn't working. So I turned off the recording inadvertently. So I just restarted the recording. So the first 20 minutes of this is not recorded anywhere. So my apologies, but it's just one of those glitchy tech nights around here. I really thought that we weren't going to be up at all because just everything was out. I mean, just dead as a rock. So at least we got that back in time. So thanks be to whoever whatever forces blessed our internet. We got it back up tonight. So going on to the messianic concept, I want to say one more thing tonight, and if any other people have comments or questions too. The there's there's a couple of interesting ideas about this Messiah process, and um, one of them is that there's again a specifically anointed one, whether there's a succession of anointed ones or not. The idea is that there's a specific one anointed. Jesus was even in the New Testament, he's specifically anointed for this task that he does. It's not a task that anybody else does. It's just his task. And the prophets were often considered that way in Judaism as well. They were specifically anointed by the Holy Spirit for that particular mission. Jonah was sent to Nineveh, Ezekiel was sent, Jeremiah was sent for this and that. They had particular roles that they were sort of appointed by God to do. That was not something that was everybody else was empowered or given to do. So there's a uniqueness to the messianic idea that means Jesus was the Messiah and not me, that Ezekiel was the prophet and not me or you. And yet, at the same time, there's a recognition that the Holy Spirit or the Spirit of God or whatever term we want to use, that enabled the prophets, that enabled the messiahs to do what they did, also indwells us, and that we may not be called or anointed to do a particular work of that scope, but that we can draw upon that same spirit, upon that same strength and wisdom and power in us in just navigating our own lives, and or not tap into that, not find it, not access it, not call upon it. And so part of the teaching of the Messiah is to help us find that little piece of it in us, not to take on their role, not to become the Jewish Messiah or the world Messiah or the Son of David or any of those things, but to become us and fulfill the role we have in our life here, which for most of us, from a world perspective, is a pretty small one. We kind of work in our own little family spiritual circle, most of us, and except for the ripple effect, which is significant, don't have any personal recognition or work beyond that we really do. Whereas the great teachers of the world, not just in the Jewish Christian tradition, but the great teachers like Krishna, Buddha, different great teachers, Saint Francis, even non-religious ones. I think Gandhi was a great teacher, for example. And he was religious personally, but he wasn't a religious or spiritual teacher in that sense. I think that I think that the part of the teaching is that these are also supposed to be way showers. In addition to whatever particular work they're doing, they're also supposed to serve as a model or a way shower for how we can begin to unlock more of our own potential. Again, not to do what they did or to do something necessarily in the scale they did, but to be an emissary of the divine to our family, to our friends, to our spiritual community, and to do that as fully as we are capable of doing it. So there's also an interesting thing that I've not heard anybody else teach, although I'm sure somebody has. In Judaism, there is a teaching that someone known as the Ari, Yitzhak ben Luria, taught. He's a very famous Jewish mystic. And the Ari taught about something called the shattering of the vessels. And that, a long story, we won't get into that tonight, but that basically now there are sparks of light and shells or husks or coverings over that light that kind of keep it hidden. And that each of us has that aspect now. We each have this kind of dense, opaque form that kind of represses and inhibits our light from full expression. And then we have that spark of light in us. We can think of that in lots of ways, but that's kind of a oversimplification. And then each of us have this spark of light. Well, what he taught was that our responsibility is something called raising holy sparks. And then we're to raise our individual sparks of light back to this oneness, this source of light from which we've all come again. So that's a fairly well-known teaching in Judaism, in quite a few other mystical traditions, and in some New Age circles as well. The part that I haven't heard taught in reference to the messianic idea in either Christian perspective or Jewish perspective is, so what if that what if there's an element of truth to that idea of these fragments of light needing to come back together? And what if the fragments of light are fragments of that Messiah, that messianic consciousness, and that we each have a part of that? But until we activate our part, the wholeness of that messianic consciousness can't be manifest in the world. So if there's any truth to that, then we have a very important role to play. Even though my part of that light might be really small, it's an important part because without it, that whole is not there. And then the consciousness, the whole messianic consciousness, cannot be manifest in the world if it's missing parts. And what if we're the missing parts? And maybe from the Jewish and Christian perspective, who keep waiting, maybe that's why they're still waiting. So maybe there's a part that we're supposed to be doing, or can be doing at least, that we haven't really stepped into yet. So I'm gonna quit there because does anybody have anything to add, questions, comments on anything we've said so far? So yes, Nahama Shuli, go ahead.
It's funny because we were reading about Moses and the burning bush this morning for a study. And something that occurred to me for the first time in this way is that Moses is going, no, I can't do this. I can't, And to me, it's kind of a metaphor for ego.
Yeah.
Want to really touch that light you're talking about within, we have to get out of the way.
Yeah.
I have to watch my ego and not go after something for me. I think the teachings that are both in the Torah and that Jesus taught about loving your neighbor and being kind and helping and all those kinds of things are the path. And many times the ego goes, oh no, I can't do that, kind of thing. And so I was just really struck this morning by, if we're doing it for a reason that I'm going to benefit because of it,
Yeah.
I need to be a little suspicious of that.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I want to bring my light to the world.
Yeah. Really good point. Really good point.
Something that came up.
Thank you. I'm going to add one little tiny bit to that and we'll go to Liz. I have been blessed, fortunate enough, lucky enough to have met several really extraordinary spiritual teachers in my lifetime. And I have read about a number of them in our history texts, in the Bible and in Eastern texts and so on. And almost there are exceptions, but almost without exception, the norm is that some of the greatest teachers in our history that we're aware of, and some of the greatest ones, I think, in our lifetime, all of them have started out saying, I can't do that. I can't do that. Nope, somebody else. I think you got the wrong guy here, or the wrong woman here. I don't, not me. Whereas I have also known teachers who are eager to step into that role and can't wait to be recognized in that position. And also, almost without fail, those are ones that to me have proven false every time. So that's another, I think, benchmark we can actually look at. So anyway, Liz, go ahead. Are you with us, Liz?
I am. I couldn't
Yay.
find my unmute button very quickly. It's like it's in there somewhere. I just had a very deep awareness as you were teaching today that when you and Ani are praying for your internet to come back,
Yeah.
you're doing a public service for all your neighbors.
Oh, there you go.
Thousands of people.
Sweet. That's sweet. Yeah.
They should start baking you cakes and cookies because apparently you have a large influence on their life they have no awareness of.
That's sweet, Liz. I like that. Thank you. Thank you.
Night, night.
Night, night. Yeah. So anybody else, comments or questions on the whole Messiah idea? So I don't see any. So let me ask you one. Anybody, I'm asking anybody. What would you consider to be characteristics of either of a Messiah or of a messianic consciousness? What would typify that? Oh, I just saw Eunice pop on. Go ahead, Eunice. You don't have to answer that question if you had something else you were going to say. You're muted. At least I can't hear you. Still can't. Oh, I just heard, I think I heard
I
you.
got it?
Yep, you're on.
Okay, I hope so. You mentioned the frequency, how a lot of traditions have a thing where they'll be marked on the forehead,
Yeah,
like at an initiation or
Yep.
something.
Mhm.
But I am also aware of I don't know how to call it, but it's not on a physical plane.
Mhm.
But it is a mark, that is in the forehead
Mhm.
that is supposed to be indicative of like what teacher you belong to
Oh, right.
or tradition or it, close connection there or just
No. That's right. Yeah. Um, yeah, there are that's something that we don't talk about much, but yes, there yeah, so people who belong to Jesus have a little J on their forehead, and people who belong to Moses have a little M on their forehead. But no, they're really I'm making light of it, but it's a real thing. They
I like that idea, but I
although the issue would probably
like that idea. I've only seen one.
it'd probably be a Yud actually for him because it was Yeshua. But anyway, yeah, the there are a group of teachers in the world who specifically take disciples. Now, all teachers obviously have students, but there are teachers who initiate people in a particular meditation practice or a particular, I'm going to just call it that, a meditation practice. And when they initiate people in that particular meditation practice, those initiates then agree to follow and practice that particular form that they've been told. And their teacher is their guide in that process, both physically in the world and also inwardly in the inner worlds. That teacher works with them and is their guide in that process. And there is an indication in the, I'll put it this way. There's an indication in the aura, and it's usually in this region, sometimes it's up here, that that other teacher that people who are those kind of teachers can perceive. And it indicates to them that that soul is to be one of their disciples. And when they meet that soul, even if that soul isn't ready for that initiation or practice yet, that teacher recognizes them the first time they meet them as sort of belonging to their group, if you will. Jesus in the New Testament refers to it as his flock, that this is his flock that he's been given. He specifically says this in ways like this. I'm not using his exact words, that he's been given a flock of people to call out of the world. The name Moshe means to draw out. He was given a people to draw out of the slavery in Egypt and to draw out of their bondage in the world. Um, that's also we find it in Hinduism, we find it in certain Buddhist teachings as well. This idea that there is a certain kind of assigned group that this teacher is specifically to find and work with. And you notice in all the traditions, the teacher calls the student, not the other way around. Yeshua calls his apostles, not the other way around. Buddha called his disciples, not the other way around, and so on. That's part of that concept. The teacher recognizes their own, and when their student is ready, they'll appear to them and call them. And of course, the student's free to respond or not respond. There are even some Native American practices that kind of have some similarity to that, with the holy people initiating people in their inner circle to study to be the next holy people in their tribe. Um, but yeah, that's a very similar idea. And the meditation practices that are taught by these various different teachers are all different avenues that they believe, rightly or wrongly, and to whatever degree, that this particular practice will help that soul to consciously access these deeper recesses of the divine in themselves, and to find a way to consciously access it more readily, more fully, more frequently, and then to help sustain them in living that consciousness more consistently, even with all the challenges of the human self and the physical body in the world. And some of these meditation practices that I've tried, I can say, do help do that. Others I've tried did not, for me, help so much. And others I've seen have pretty much thoroughly confused their practitioners and haven't helped. So there's a wide range of those things. But the
Thoroughly
one
confused, I understand. But
thoroughly confused, yeah. One of the downfalls to teaching about a Messiah, one of the downfalls to teaching about a particular meditation practice or a particular spiritual practice or tradition, one of the downfalls to that is, let's say I find something that works for me. I find a meditation practice that works for me. I find a faith practice of some kind that works for me, Judaism, Christianity, some variant of the two, some whatever it is. I find some form of way of looking at the world and a way of practicing my faith that involves meditation, prayer, and study of some kind with some orientation. And that works for me. It really does it. I begin to unlock all these things in my awareness that I didn't know were there. I start to access these deeper parts of myself. I feel more fulfilled, more connected to God, more at peace, more all those things. And it works for me. And it really does. And so then I get excited about the fact that it works for me because it really has worked for me. But that doesn't mean it will work for you. It might, or some of it might, but not all of it. But we're not the same individual. And so there are multiple practices because there need to be, because not one practice works the same for all people, and not all people wake up in the same sequence, in the same timing, in the same order. So the downfall or the caution in all spiritual teaching of this tradition is my answer, or this really helps, or this is the meditation practice you should do. It's the best one. Okay, that's great until we start thinking this is the right one and the other ones aren't. This is the highest one and the other ones aren't. Because the God, the big God, not the little bitty piece I have here, the big God, this oneness, already knows and has put into place all the pieces every soul needs to fully wake up and come back into that oneness again. It's already there. And the path for them to find it is already laid out. And the timing is already set. And it's already unfolding. It's in process. So the problem is that some students and even some teachers have been benefited so much by their particular practice, they become convinced that's it. And then they develop this spiritual arrogance. They don't know it is spiritual arrogance, but they develop this spiritual arrogance that this is the highest path, the one I teach. This is the one that will get you there fastest and best, the one I teach. This is the teacher that really can do it for you, not that one. Well, this group can take you maybe this far, but my group can take you this far. And then we start getting away from the spirit that has designed all these avenues so that each soul has a way to connect. And something that worked for you 20 years ago might not anymore, but it did then. But now you have touched enough and expanded enough in your consciousness that you need something that will take you deeper and higher. And what you were practicing won't anymore. So now you move on. that's how the process actually works. And we often, including me, often get stuck in a more tunnel vision scope of, well, this is it for sure because it's working for me. Well, that's great, but something else might be working for somebody else. And you're not the arbiter of that that's in a position to sit in judgment on it. That's my judgment. So, um, anyway, um, so the, and even Jesus, so
I find it,
yeah, Eunice, go ahead.
I was, you know, I've had the experience where a spiritual teacher, I would have thought they should have known better,
Mhm.
as far as addressing me as, why don't you just join us and get it over with? When everything to me said, they should have been able to see that,
Mm, yeah,
that this was not where I was going to fit in.
right, right,
Um, not for me, you know,
right.
everybody else who was in the room, maybe, but,
Hmm. Hmm.
and
Yeah,
it's like, shouldn't they have been able to tell that?
I know, I know. And again, I think part of that is the again the confusion we have between the divine and the human. We the spiritual teachers themselves begin to believe that the human part of their personality is what's infallible and divine, and then they get really off track, and they don't see things that they could see if they weren't looking through that filter. And it's just human nature. We all do it, including great teachers. They do it too. But great teachers usually recognize it pretty quickly, which is most of us recognize it pretty slowly. So um, I'll tell you one thing about,
I guess I was, really seeing.
yeah, yeah, right.
I mean,
Exactly.
I was thinking of, that these people should actually be able to
Hmm.
see. I mean,
Hmm. I know,
beyond the physical level,
I know.
to be able to know that.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, I mean,
I bet.
I have only seen it once on somebody, and it was definitely a very Christian symbol
Hmm.
in the case of that person.
Hmm.
Um, but I've heard tell
Yeah, yeah.
that people, I don't know, has it been called a soul sign or something?
Yeah, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's called the seal of the Holy Spirit. Sometimes it's called different things. But yeah. Um, so the so that's the idea of the Messiah. I'll say this and we'll wrap up because I just noticed the time. But when Jesus did come forward at that time in that body, there was a lot of expectation about a Messiah of some kind coming in most Jewish circles. And the people who accepted that he was it, even if you don't believe that, let's say that's true. Let's say that he was it, and they accepted that he was this one of the messiahs that was expected, and he was, and they were right. Then the problem becomes that thereafter, every generation of what evolved into Christianity then says, oh, because he was it, he's the only one ever. And that isn't what they taught. That's not what he taught. That's not what any of them taught. But that's what was put on that then, is that he's the only one ever. And so we're back to that exclusivity thing again. And it's part of our nature, but it's something that we need to pay attention to in spiritual circles because um, the I'll close with this. There's a point at which Yeshua is now famous in the New Testament. He's well known in his own time. People are coming to him from all over. They consider him a great teacher, even the ones who don't believe he's a Messiah. They think he's a great teacher or a prophet. And one of them comes to him with a question. The question is about eternal life. But he begins his question by saying, good teacher, what must I do to have eternal life? Jesus eventually answers that. His answer has nothing to do with believing in him, by the way. But he does answer that. But before he answers it, he stops the person and says, "Why are you calling me good? There's only one that's good, and that's God." And so that kind of perspective of the teacher is there to point us to the one, not to try to convince us that they're the one. So that's another benchmark in looking at teachers. Is the teacher keep pointing you to him or her, or does the teacher keep pointing you to God? Who's the teacher really serving, themselves or the one? So anyway, we'll draw it to a close with that tonight. So those of you who participated verbally, thank you. Those who participated energetically, thank you. I'm going to do one more on this messianic thing, talking about some of the messianic expectations in Judaism, and some that Jesus did fulfill and some he positively didn't, and what we make of all that. And do we have any of those expectations now, of these things that we still hope will come to pass, or have we given up on them? And then after that, we'll move on to a new series. If you have anything in particular you'd like presented as a series that you think I'm capable of doing, if you suggest something I can't, I'll just open up to that and go, I can't do that. Sorry, I don't know. But feel free to make suggestions, text me, email me, whatever. All right, so let's wrap up for tonight and just invite you to take a moment of quiet again. And notice that there is something in you that draws you to these things, not just the inner hour programs, but that draws you to this kind of study, this kind of community, this kind of dialogue. What that is drawing you to participate in, to be part of, or to at least look into these sorts of things. That's the very thing, in my opinion, that will lead you where you really want to go. That's what we need to pay attention to. Sometimes it's very subtle. Sometimes it'll be something just as simple as we'll sit down and take a few minutes of quiet. That's that same voice, that same energy, that same spirit, whatever name you want to call it, that is moving you toward your best and highest all the time. So be kind to yourself and pay attention to it. So may our blessing this week be that voice be dynamic in us, and that we be able to hear it in such a way that we can recognize it for what it is and willingly begin to respond to it more completely. And that to whatever degree we can, we try to assist others who are seeking that voice in themselves and encourage their search, using the wisdom from our own search, but recognizing that it is their search. May this be a week of blessing for us all, and may we be a blessing to those that we meet. Thank you all for your kind attention tonight. Good night.
Good.
Thank you all.